Welcome to Trending in Education. Mike Palmer here. Very happy to be joined by Melissa Griffith for an interview with Dr. Mohanbir Sawhney from the Kellogg School of Management. We'll cut right here to Melissa and I interviewing Dr. Sawhney in a really interesting conversation about the future of the MBA.
Really excited to have here with us Dr. Mohanbir Sawhney, author, a professor from my alma mater, and now Associate Dean for Digital Innovation and McCormick Foundation Professor of Technology at the Kellogg School of Management. We're here to talk to him about his plans to reinvent the MBA and whatever else comes up on our mind. Dr. Sawhney, opening thoughts?
Well, this has been a crazy past few months, as all of you can imagine. Our business as we know it was turned on its head, whether it is executive education or MBA classrooms. We are, as most top business schools are in a difficult position because we sell a very, very high price premium product, which is premised on the value of the in-person experience and the socialization that comes with it. Within the span of a few weeks, we were forced to transition and turn everything into a virtual and digital experience, and we still have a lack of clarity around when we will be able to resume in-person classes. But with crisis comes opportunity. It has been a phenomenal time. I think there's never been a better time to innovate.
Mike Palmer here. In many ways, it seemed as though you were uniquely prepared for this challenge in some interesting ways. So I'd love it if you could maybe flesh out for our listeners your background and what you were focusing on right around the time of this perfect storm when you hopefully were in a pretty good position to captain your ship.
So I have been at Kellogg for almost 28 years and always sort of been interested at looking at the intersection between marketing, technology, and innovation. And I've been really interested in how technology can be used to transform businesses, and our business is no exception. You know, if you think about it, the business of business schools is ripe for disruption. There's an Indian proverb that I like, which is that under a bright lamp, there is a great darkness. We teach business strategy, but our own business models, our business strategy, our value propositions, our offerings are deeply flawed. We have been, for the past several years, pricing ourselves out of the market, creating, the price of education continues to increase. The number of applicants to business schools is declining. And so I think COVID-19 merely added fuel to a fire that was already burning, which is that our fundamental assumptions about how we deliver education and the cost structure that we have and the reach and scale that we have are simply unsustainable. So looking at this even a couple of years ago, I realized that there is a way to scale our audience to people worldwide and at a more affordable price point. So why don't we explore digital methods of delivering executive education? However, there is an orthodoxy. The orthodoxy is anything that happens in the four walls of the classroom is high value, and anything that is done online is cheap and inferior. And this notion, stereotype, had been strengthened by the failure of the so-called MOOCs, or the massively online courses. Because I joke that the MOOCs follow the communist work ethic, which is I pretend to pay you and you pretend to learn, right? It's kind of like 50,000 people show up for a course, but 6% of them complete it. So, so in between that extreme of $50 price courses from Coursera or Udemy and the $100,000 MBA, I felt there had to be something in between. Because, truth is rarely black and white. That is why gray is the color of wisdom. There's sort of some hybrid in between that is better than and more cost effective than either extreme. So this is where I started to work on the creation of what we call SPOCs, which are small private online courses where you have cohorts of 200 to 300 students taking a 6 to 8 week course where you do a lot of effort up front to create the video-based content, interactive exercises, self-paced and self-guided interactive learning. You complement that with the community that you build. And then that is actually a flipped classroom because all of the sort of concepts and frameworks are explained in bite-sized videos and exercises that apply those concepts. but then we complement it with live sessions that I host. Right. So we do a series of live webinars to complement where people can ask questions and they can get into applications.
So there's some thoughtful design going into what you're delivering. And why I find that very interesting is that it's a counterpoint to a lot of the emergency remote teaching that happened in the response to COVID, where you were a couple years, you were actually 20, 30 years ahead, but you were prepared to deliver with some design intent, an online learning program, whereas many others were not prepared to deliver online at all. And that's where they immediately had to hop into their Zoom rooms and just run with it, which is why I think your perspective is really unique. And it's really a great opportunity for us to hear from you, because it also sounds as though you were delivering these SPOCs. By the way, as a Star Trek fan, I also prefer Spock to Mook anyway. It just seems smarter to begin with. But just the idea that you were delivering these SPOCs, you were thinking about transforming through digital, and then COVID happens. I think that's just a very singular moment in time. I think we felt oddly lucky doing a trend spotting show about learning and education where everything suddenly pivoted. To your point, it's like an accelerant, this COVID pandemic. Trends we saw 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road are now happening, months, weeks away. It's a really transformative time. And then, Melissa, maybe from your perspective, coming out of Kellogg, I'd love to get a little bit of your take on what was your experience as someone who graduated maybe 10 years ago or something. So I think that's an interesting dimension to bring to Dr. Sawhney as well, is like, as someone who had been through Kellogg's program, what did you learn? And then for me, honestly, I got my MBA from the School of Hard Knocks. I've been in business for a while and kind of played with my head up, but I think it's an interesting set of perspectives. So Melissa.
I am class of 2007 at Kellogg. Seems like a lifetime ago. When I went to do my MBA, we're a much different world than we're in right now. It was go to one of these top MBA programs or virtually nothing else out there. Since graduating from it and being in the education space myself, there's so many other choices. First of all, do I go back and get an MBA, or do I go more into technology or data science or data analytics? Like, those are all the challenges. Like, since I've left Kellogg, I've learned all these other skills too that are necessary for going in the world. So I've long looked back at the MBA program, and even being a feeder, being one of the people who deliver the GMAT, they then gets people into business school. I've looked and said, like, the MBA program, you can see it's declining because they're not innovating quickly enough. And Mohan touched on a lot of what the reality of it is, right? When you're competing, like when you're a $100,000 MBA program, competing with less, like, say, the boot camps that are like $10,000, like when a student is making that trade-off, they're not necessarily one for one in the educational quality, but they are, the price relative to the value is probably the return on investment is probably very similar. Right? And I think that's one of the challenges that I've known the MBA was going to have to face. And so it's good to hear the professor talk about moving into small courses, which I think is very needed because of lifelong learning. And I know you've done a lot of work on that. Mohan. So I'd love you to talk about just where you see lifelong learning going, because as a lifelong learner, I've felt also that I've had to continue to upskill, and to see Kellogg bringing degrees like that, or any school bringing degrees like that, it's going to be helpful.
So a great question, Melissa. And I will sort of start with a confession, which is we have failed you. We have failed you as alums, because I'll draw an analogy. That in the enterprise software world, what they used to do was sell you a huge block of software, which you paid millions of dollars upfront for. And then you would say, we'll see you in 3 years when we come up with a new version. That's how we're doing business education. We give you a $200,000, it's not $100,000, it's $200,000.
No,
2 years. So when you give you a $200,000 degree, but then, Melissa, we tell you, you're done for life. Well, that's not true. Your learning never stops. So what have we, when I say we have failed you, what have we done to engage you on an ongoing basis to continue to upgrade you, upskill you, and more importantly, do it in a way that is responsive to your ongoing evolution of your needs, your career, your job. So, when the entire software industry has moved to SaaS, which is software as a service.
Right.
Think about Microsoft. They used to do Office 2010, Office 2013. Now they have Office 365. Instead of 3 years, every 3 weeks you get features. And whenever you log in, the software is up to date. Where is learning as a service?
Right.
Yes.
So that is something I'm working on now, is we want to offer you Kellogg as a service, which will, why not create a subscription-based learning service where we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to figure out what is your profile, what are your learning needs. We look at your previous experience and we figure out what is it that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Just like Netflix tells you what movies you ought to watch, I will surface for Melissa saying, this is what you need to learn this month. And by the way, the day she changes jobs and her LinkedIn profile changes, my learning algorithm adapts and says, now you've moved into product management. Here's a few things you might want to learn. So I give you a learning passport for life, not just a degree called an MBA. And that way, if you can pay $39 a month for your Peloton, you can damn well pay $200 a month for my service. Now do the math, Melissa. We have 60,000 alums at Kellogg.
Yes.
If 10,000 of them buy into this service at $200 a month, it's $24 million a year in subscription-based revenues.
It's also, and I'd say that the flywheel that you build among your alumni in that context, assuming you get that adoption, if you can build that sense of community, which I think people are frequently seeking beyond a degree, that's part of why, like the whole concept of going to business school for the network, this gives you some sort of stickiness to that network and some continuity. I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, because not only will I be able to then personalize this learning journey for a lifetime for you, but as you just pointed out, Mike, we can create communities of interest.
Yes.
Right? People in investment banking, people who are entrepreneurs, women in business and women in technology. So whatever your area of it, you can self-affiliate. And that organic community of interests can be formed around the content themes and the learning themes. So we are leaving so much money and so much value on the table by graduating our students and wishing them good luck and goodbye forever. Until you come back for your reunion, 10 years later when we ask you for money, and then Melissa turns around and said, what have you done for me lately?
Which is why we drop off after about 10 years, we just stop giving back. Is that correct? No, it makes a ton of sense what you're saying. And I know it's an amazing business model, but I think as a fellow Kellogg alumni, I think it's something I want. It's something I crave, right? Like I look to other sources. I need. Yeah. And right now I'm getting it from other sources. So I'm curious, what do you think are some of the competitors that you're going to be facing in this space? Like who would you look at the competitors?
Disruption is coming from lots of places.
Yeah.
And as you know, that rarely is it that the incumbents in an industry are the innovators. This is
Clayton Christensen,
who recently
passed.
He talked about it a lot. So one phenomenon that I predict will accelerate, it's starting already, but it'll accelerate, is that you will see the emergence of faculty stars. These will be mega brands, and these people will branch out independently, and they will create their own streaming or online businesses.
It's the Khan Academy profusion of that.
It's Scott Galloway, right? That is his entire model.
Scott Galloway on his Section 4, which is, he's now selling thousands of 2-week courses. I think that today, and in fact, this is the distinction, Melissa, between what you did in an MBA and what you need now. What you did in an MBA, you paid for certification, you paid for community. Now you need skills.
Yes.
Right? You're going to pay for skills. You're going to pay for relevant and contemporary stuff that will help you on the job. I don't care. You don't want another Kellogg degree. You already have that, right?
Yeah.
So that is where you can create very targeted, specific skill-based learning that is contemporary, that is relevant to what's going on in business today. I did not teach, you did not learn machine learning and AI when you were at Kellogg because this stuff didn't exist then. Now, where are you going to get it? So if I create a 2-week targeted program saying, here's what you need to learn about platform strategy, here's what you need to learn about digital payments, here's what you need to learn about AI, then there is a huge market for that. And I believe this is going to, if the business schools don't do it, faculty and third parties, like there is a company called Reforge in Silicon Valley that is creating product management, programs. There's product school, there's, all of these General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
These are all startup companies that will either rope in faculty or they will rope in industry experts.
Right.
So to provide these. The
Mm-hmm.
other kind of competitor that I see is the universities and institutions that are more savvy online.
Right.
I point out, there are Southern New Hampshire University.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
University of Phoenix online. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these folks have spent years perfecting
Yeah.
the online delivery model, and I think they can move into this space.
Western governors. Yeah. All those guys. Yep.
How important, like as Kellogg and a Brandon school, like how important do you think the brand is going to matter in this space? Like, are the Harvards and the Kellogg's and the Stanfords going to win, or can a University of Phoenix actually supplement and disrupt?
The brand still has value. The brand, because part of why one goes to a top university or a business school is the experience that you have in campus, but also the community and the relationships that you build.
Mm-hmm.
So that is still going to have value. But with that said, I think that whole campus experience also needs to be reimagined to make it more accessible, more affordable, and more convenient. I will make a prediction that, at least this is my agenda at Kellogg, where I'm leading the digital transformation initiative, that in 12 months, and that's an aggressive schedule, but in 12 months, no course we offer will remain untouched by digital first DNA. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it will be taught online.
Yeah.
It will mean that we will add some asynchronous components. We'll add some, so let me point out, an example. Why is it that if you go to a Wharton or a Harvard or a Kellogg, where there are 700 people in a class, why is it that 10 professors teach you the fundamentals of accounting in a classroom, right? Where everybody's teaching the same stuff. And by the way, those accounting principles are quite,
standard,
quite stable and standard.
Yeah.
So why is it that we cannot take the best of those professors, record the lecture-oriented components in small bite-sized video modules, along with interactive self-paced knowledge checks and exercises, and then move that into asynchronous mode? Then you will still have in-person experiences. You'll come to the classroom. When the classroom, what I might have is a CEO who comes in and says, here's my balance sheet, analyze it. It's an interaction, it's debate, it's discussion, it's action learning. So we use digital for what digital is best at. We use the classroom for what is classroom is best at. And you know who's done this? Retail. It's called omni-channel retail. Where is our omni-channel learning?
Right.
So that's the idea, that combine the best of online with the best of in-person to create hybrid learning experiences that are superior to what we do today.
I mean, I think that's amazing, because just thinking back on my Kellogg days, I remember, I don't even know if you guys still have that in place, how much value and premium we put on getting the best professors, and not everyone got the same experience, right? We used to have to bid. We had a whole bidding war, Mike, for, in case I've never explained the twisted nature that is business school sometimes. We had to bid for our professors, and so you can only get to one really great professor or two really great professors in a quarter. Now you're saying you're going to bring that, you're going to democratize it, you're going to give it to everyone. I think that is awesome.
I take 50% of the content that's lecture oriented and I move it online. Now I'm left with 10 sessions in class. I can do one of two things. I can either teach twice as many students, so my productivity is doubled, or I can have half as many students in the class, which, by the way, is what we are going to be forced to do with COVID-19.
Yes.
So distancing in the classroom.
Right.
So now, instead of 60 people vying for airtime in a classroom, I have 25 students who I can really personally engage with in a more intimate way. And by the way, I'm not lecturing to them. I'm engaging and interacting with them. So it's a better experience so for the students, it's a better experience for faculty.
Yeah, I have a related thought just around this as well, in light of the emotionally tumultuous world that we're living in these days, is how do you then also train the whole student, engage the emotional side of your student body, and then also make sure you're reaching a diverse enough set of students, some of whom may be really struggling with a lot of the turmoil that we're all facing these days. So I'd love to get any of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think this stuff gets very real, Mike, because I taught about 150 students in the spring, and two of them, one was recovering from COVID-19, and the other one had just been diagnosed and
Yep.
was going through the disease.
Mm-hmm.
So this gets very real. Also, I had students who were stuck in India,
Mm-hmm.
students who were stuck in Texas, students who were stuck in Boston.
Yeah.
So I was actually teaching a global audience, even though
Mm-hmm.
these were all Kellogg full-time MBA
Yeah.
students. So,
Right.
so here's a few things that I did. And I strongly recommend that professors try to think about experiential innovation instead of just pedagogical innovation.
Mm-hmm.
You're teaching human beings, not just content, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what I did in the week prior to class was I set up one-on-one meet and greets with individually with students. I had a sign-up sheet on Google. They signed up, and it was just a 5 minutes get to know you, because it's going to be much harder for me to kind of put names to faces in
Yep.
when you have 50 people on a video screen. So, and it was just also meant to be a health check. It's like, that's where I found out that this student of mine, she's from Turkey, she's in New York. She's like, I just had COVID-19. I mean,
Right.
I just, so it was it made it all human. So that way I got to know my students one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
before they came to class. The other thing that I did every week was I hosted virtual office hours,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one. So anybody wanted to come, talk, meet. And by the way, you can shorten you can create short 5-minute, 10-minute, check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did something crazy at the end of the class, which was, I was teaching an evening class. An evening class was around dinner. And so I said, here's what we're going to do in the final class. I had a bottle of wine personally delivered to every student's home.
Nice.
And if they didn't drink wine, I had a pizza delivered to them. And then in the last 20 minutes of the class, we had a final toast because we had students who were graduating. So we all brought out our wines. And then I also found out that amongst my students, there was a guy who was a stand-up comedian. There's another person who was a singer.
Oh, wow.
And my course moderator, who is a rapper. So we had a performance. We also told them, bring your pets, bring your significant others, bring your kids. And it was a virtual send-off.
Wow. I feel like you could monetize that too.
I would recommend that faculty really think not faculty to student, but human to human. And one has to go that extra mile to make the virtual appear human, but it can be done.
So I know this. So we're all very excited about what you're doing here. What are you worried about? What do you think are the downsides of going more online, bringing more flipped classroom into the model?
Melissa, the first thing I'm worried about is us. I have met the enemy, and they are us, which is bringing faculty along. People don't like change. Change is disruptive. Change is uncomfortable. And I think that what we are realizing, and what I am personally realizing, is teaching virtually is not teaching, it's performance. It's a performance. It means you need camera presence. You need look at me, I'm gesturing.
Yeah, a lot of over the top.
Right?
Yes.
And also your energy, the camera flattens you.
Yes.
So you have to inject. I am exhausted when I finish 6 hours a day sometimes during the week.
Yeah.
And it in my estimate, takes about 25% more energy to teach when your camera is your favorite student as opposed to in the classroom.
Right.
So I think that moving faculty into that mode of sort of delivering, particularly now when you start to create professionally short content. Now you're in a studio. You are actually, it's like shooting a movie. You're creating a program. You got to do post production. So change is going to be difficult, and we have to be sure that we are inclusive. That we are bringing people along on this journey, because unfortunately the train is going to leave the station. But the question is, how many people can we get on board, and how comfortable will they be? So that's, Melissa, one thing I'm really worried about. The other thing that I'm worried about is, when and how will we be able to resume in-class experiences? Because I still believe that we cannot sustain the experience quality, or for that matter, the price point. If we tell students that congratulations, your fall quarter just went entirely online. That is not going to work. So we are struggling and trying to figure out, because guidance keeps changing. We don't know whether we'll be in stage 3 or stage 4 or stage 5 of reopening.
Right.
So we don't know if we'll be able to, so it's easy, Melissa, to say that you want the in-class experience is the high value experience, but hold on. You cannot go to the cafeteria. You will have designated lanes when which you have walk to the classroom.
Yeah.
When you sit in the classroom, you'll be socially distanced.
Right.
You have to wear masks the moment
Yeah.
get in the classroom. The professor will be separated with plexiglass.
Right.
So it's going to be a crappy experience,
Yeah.
So even in the classroom, and by the way, you can't hang out, you can't sit.
Your anxiety will be
Anxiety
higher.
levels are high. People are stressed, and the whole value of serendipitous, hallway conversations. In fact, you're going to be told to leave the building
Right.
if you don't have a
No
class.
serendipity.
No serendipity, no water cooler conversation. So I worry about that. That how can we continue to provide a high value in-person experience when social distancing and restrictions are in place? And by the way, related to that is the problem that some of our international students may not even be able to make it back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of faculty we have are old.
Right.
So they have the right to say, I'm not going into a classroom because I'm immunocompromised. I have, so then they will be teaching from their home. So how do we manage all of those variables to make sure that the students have as high quality and experience as possible? So it's a challenging time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Some of the technologies that I thought were just kind of farcical years ago, I think are going to become much more relevant in the future, particularly around telepresence. Like the idea of feeling as though I am proximate with others. It's part of why Zoom, I think, has done so well in this period, is that it is a good proxy for being in the same physical space as other humans. But I think as humans, we want public spaces to engage in. Even though I have a very minuscule % chance of catching COVID, I still go to the coffee shop to buy coffee because I want to be in a physical space with other people in my community. Like that's just part of what it means to be human. And that's why it'll be interesting to rethink that when one specific physical space has been the prevailing concept of the graduate school. Whereas if you were Starbucks, which is another brand that's been getting a lot of attention lately, they're everywhere. Like they are in every physical location. Warby Parker is another one that I was thinking about as well when you were talking, where like if Kellogg had kiosks, or if there was a way for you to have satellite instances of the physical experience.
Hold it. We're working on it.
Oh, really?
We're working on it. So let me explain. And by the way, this brings the world of virtual and physical together in a very creative way.
Mm-hmm.
So we are running a pilot with an interesting startup company that has created a holographic telepresence platform.
Nice. So
essentially, it projects a live hologram of the speaker onto a virtual stage or a physical stage in a remote location.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that I could be in conversation with Satya Nadella and Jeff Bezos in Seattle on the same stage, projected live as holograms, projected to Beijing, projected to Delhi, projected to Sao Paulo. So they have studios around the world, so they do 3D capture.
That's
and
cool.
then what you see is, so I can literally be talking to you, Mike, on a stage, standing.
Right. Yeah.
But we are thousands of miles apart, and the audience may be in a third location. So,
right.
So that is a combination of physical and virtual, because the audience will be physical in the location, but the projection is done digitally. So there are some interesting new modalities. Let me just say here that Zoom is just like I think telepresence on training wheels.
Exactly.
So it's a good short term, easy to use, but it is a very crappy platform relative to what you can do. And even 4 years ago, I did another pilot, and 4 years ago, I did a pilot with Cisco with telepresence, where I taught a course. I taught 4 classes to 7 locations worldwide, where we had audiences come into the Cisco offices because they have telepresence in all of the locations.
Right, I remember. Yeah.
So I taught in a classroom which was the Rosemont office in Chicago, but we had satellite connections in Beijing, in Jerusalem, in Frankfurt, in Miami, and so on. So in each of those places, I had about 7 to 10 alumni who came physically to the office, and I ran a classroom, and it was immersive.
Yeah, I bet.
It was just like being in a classroom together.
Mm-hmm.
So that, what I believe is there's a lot of opportunity at the high end to create premium immersive digital experiences for learning that I think not a lot of people are sort of, exploring right now.
Right.
Life beyond Zoom.
So you have an audacious goal, like that you said on your LinkedIn profile, that had me grappling with how are you going to do this, of 10x value. You're going to create 10x value for both the students and for Kellogg when we go to this digital platform. My question is how, and two, how are you going to measure it as well?
I mean, we've in some sense already created 10x. Let's look at my SPOCs.
Yeah.
So in my in-person classes, my capacity is that I teach about 60 students. I teach 3 classes, give or take, maybe 200 students if my classes are entirely full. A lot of faculty, their classes don't fill up. So 150 is the average number of students that you teach, and the cost to put on an average MBA course, hang on to your seats, is north of $125,000 per class. Mm. Because the fully loaded cost for a faculty member is $3,000 to $4,000. They teach 3 classes. So put it another way, if I pay fully loaded a faculty member about $400,000 a year, and they teach 200 students, so that's a cost of $2,000 per student. And by the way, I'm not even looking at physical plant and all of that. Administrative overhead. Mm-hmm. Relative to that, in my SPOCs, I've designed 3 courses, one on product strategy, one on digital marketing, one on AI. I've been in the market for about 16 months, and we have enrolled over 5,000 students in my courses, and it's at a $2,500 price point on the average. Mm-hmm. So if you do the math, that's 12 million in revenues. Mm-hmm. And I won't tell you what our margins are, but let's just say they're good. Because the variable cost is very low. So I think, Melissa, even if you say that the experience is 0.5x, since I've gone 20x in scale, I think I'm at 10x in terms of value.
You need a new goal, I guess.
Yeah.
No. I'm going to ask a couple more questions because I am curious. You have done that. So what, are you teaching purely, is it live or you just?
It's a combination. As I said, this is SPOCs includes some live, but only 20% of the content is delivered, or the contact hours are live. So that is where the scalability is coming from. I'm running these courses on 8-week cadences. I'm doing 6 deliveries a year times 3 courses, 18 deliveries, for which I do have to run 4 webinars each. So I will do 75 hours of webinars in a year, but that ends up producing 12 million in revenues.
Mm-hmm. And then my second thing is the value for me now, the student. How are you bringing me, your alumni, back, the untapped person that you filled? How are you getting me back into this? Because right now, $2,500 for one course does not seem like a value proposition that I'm rushing back for yet. But you did mention early on the actually paying like a monthly subscription.
Yeah, I think that there will be a continuum. There will be a continuum that goes all the way from one extreme is your 2-year, $200,000 degree.
Yeah.
Right. The next level will be sort of an executive program that you can take for in person 2 to 3 weeks at maybe $20,000. Mm-hmm. The next level is SPOCs that you can take at $2,500. The next level below that is what Scott Galloway and company are doing, which is 2-week programs at $500.
Yeah,
they're very targeted. Okay, and then the next level down will be a subscription-based ongoing service.
Yeah,
right.
I think that as business schools, we need to bridge that entire continuum of sort of from one end of sort of a monthly subscription, almost like a Netflix type of subscription, all the way up to that gold-plated premium degree that you offer. So we are working hard to fill up different points of that continuum with offerings. We are not there yet with all of these different, and by the way, these offerings are arranged, as you can see, in increasing order of scale, but also descending order of sort of, the cost and some compromise to the richness of the experience, but not as much as people would think. So,
but then also it was interesting when you were musing a bit about the highest end of this. to justify the cost and the return in terms of the value exchange for the learner, that's where the really transformative, immersive learning experiences will be designed. What fascinates you the most? Is it really across the continuum, or is it designing those really purely optimal deliveries at the high end, or designing something really scalable and algorithmic on the bottom end, or is it the whole ecosystem?
I think that designing an algorithmic, personalized, lifelong learning journey for the learner like Melissa, who, the value proposition that I will be a guide by your side for a lifetime. I think, and using the best of AI to personalize that learning. By the way, it's not going to be easy, because that learning will also need to be chunked down into learning objects that then can be flexibly combined into learning journeys. So there's a fair bit of engineering involved. What is a course? There's no such thing as a course. It'll be learning objects, which will be bite-sized concepts that you need to learn, self-contained with exercises and certification and valid and assessment. So that is it is a project that is at the intersection of object-oriented programming, software as a service, and AI and machine learning.
Right.
Yeah.
So not an easy technical problem to solve.
Right.
That's what fascinates me the most.
Yeah. And how much human mediation is needed there too is an interesting question. Like, how thin a layer of like human mediated engagement is needed to make it sticky.
And there's no reason that you can't have human mediated engagement in multiple ways. So if I tell Melissa that I want her to pay $200 a month for this subscription service, which will feed her asynchronous content that will be personalized to her, there is no reason that I can't complement that with once a month live webinars with leading faculty members who talk about contemporary topics. For example, one of the contemporary topics I'm going to do a webinar on soon for a company is how do you do high touch sales in a business to business company when you are entirely virtual, right? So things like that we may complement that, and those may be potentially even offered as premium add-ons. Think of a basic cable plus premium. Pay-per-view movies. So I want to look at the cable model or the streaming model to see if there are analogs there. So that's where you can have a human touch. You can have communities built, and you can even add in career counselors who work with alums to say, hey,
executive coaching type things.
Executive coaching, career coaching. So we can add human layers to that, and we can do that either as part of the base offering or as premium add-ons where, Melissa can buy an hour of mentoring from a career coach. Or she can, more importantly, connect with an alum. Who may be able to guide her, because we all want to give back.
Or she could provide that coaching. Yeah, exactly, Melissa. Come on. What are you giving to Kellogg?
It's only about me, what I'm getting out of this, not the other way around. Thank you very much.
So it's a platform for community building, for coaching, for mentoring, in addition to consumption.
I'm excited. I'm excited for your challenge ahead, and excited to see what's going to happen here, because it's a very interesting space, and it's a space that I thought we should have been making a lot more progress in. So
I've never been more excited and never been more busy. So despite the fact that I'm not traveling, I traveled 200,000 miles last year. I had already gone around the world by February this year. I'd done 25,000 miles by February until everything came crashing.
And what are you doing with all that extra time? Are you being more productive, or are you losing?
I am being way more productive, but I'm ending up doing a lot more. This new responsibility that I have keeps me very busy. I'm literally, and of course, in March, I ended up sort of starting with the busiest teaching time. I do all of my teaching in 10 weeks, and it happened to be those 10 weeks that virus hit. So I've just finished teaching 90 hours of classes virtually.
Wow, you should do a teaching memoir of that period, because that sounds pretty fascinating. One of the questions that I know we're getting close to time, one of the questions we always like to ask our guests is, what trends are capturing your imagination these days? And frequently something we haven't maybe talked about that may be sort of emerging. I know you touched on some interesting stuff around telepresence and some of the things that you're piloting, but if we're looking at the decade of the 2020s off to this difficult start, but accelerating into the future, what's capturing your imagination?
I think what's capturing my imagination the most is that many of the assumptions that we held as gospel truth will be broken and shattered and turned on their head over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And while we may hide under the shade of the Ivy League and the brands that we have for a while, the shakeout is coming. And that shakeout is first going to hit smaller universities and colleges, second and third tier colleges, but eventually it's going to creep into every university. So we are going to have to, I think that 10 years from now, you will not recognize education, particularly business school education, which I think will be at the vanguard of changes to come. And, universities are some of the oldest living institutions. We have the most inertia, we have the most history, we have the most heritage, and we are the least amenable to change. But I think that over the next 10 years, I see an immovable object being hit by an unstoppable force. And it'll be interesting to see what results.
That's what it reminds me of. It's attributed to both Alan Kay and Abraham Lincoln. The quote, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. It seems like you're on a good track. Thanks very much for your time. Professor Mohan Sawhney from Kellogg University School of Management. Thank you again. And to our listeners, we'll be back again soon on Trending in Education.